Have you ever stopped to think about why we cling so tightly to things? Isn't it curious how a simple object can carry so much meaning? An inherited ring, a car bought with hard-earned money, or even that sweater you haven't worn in years but can't seem to let go of. It might sound irrational, but there's a reason behind it. In truth, attachment goes far beyond the material. It's deeply rooted in our psychology, shaped by culture, and even influenced by the way our brains work. Now, here's something to provoke your thoughts. What if I told you that much of your suffering comes from this attachment? Yes, the very thing you believe comforts you might actually be holding you back. But here's the good news. There's a way to understand this dynamic and perhaps find greater lightness and freedom. In this video, we'll explore why we attach to things, how it impacts our lives, and, most importantly, how you can turn the tide. Get ready to question your assumptions, challenge your habits, and discover a new perspective on something you may not have even noticed until now. Because, in the end, the answer to this question goes far beyond possessions. It has the power to transform how you live. The psychology of attachment is one of the most fascinating windows into understanding the human mind. Developed by John Bowlby, this theory reveals how the bonds formed in childhood shape our behavior and relationships. Think about how a baby clings to its mother's touch. That's the beginning of a pattern that can stay with us for a lifetime. As adults, we no longer carry a security blanket, but we still seek something, or someone, that provides that same sense of comfort. It's intriguing to think about how such early roots can influence an entire life. Now, see how this translates into adulthood. The relationships we build, romantic or platonic, often mirror past experiences. An adult with secure attachments to caregivers tends to show confidence in relationships. On the other hand, someone who faced rejection might struggle with fears of abandonment. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to constantly test the love of others, while others fear opening up? This dynamic is often not a conscious choice, but a reflection of how we were emotionally shaped. What's remarkable is that these patterns aren't set in stone. The study of attachment teaches us that, even with deeply rooted tendencies, we can rewrite our emotional stories. The first step is to observe these patterns, like a detective analyzing their own emotions. Along this journey, we'll understand not only our human connections, but also how objects and even memories can play a surprisingly similar role. After all, why do we attach so strongly to things? Material attachment is an intriguing curiosity of the human mind. From a favorite childhood toy to a car bought with sweat and effort, objects seem to serve a role far greater than mere utility. They become extensions of who we are, like an invisible signature of our identity. Imagine someone wearing a luxury watch or a t-shirt featuring an iconic band logo. This says more about who they are or want to be than any initial conversation. But are we using these objects, or are they defining us? This relationship goes beyond aesthetics. It's deeply tied to self-esteem. People often use material possessions as markers of success or stability. A classic example is those who invest in massive homes or cutting-edge gadgets, as if each acquisition reaffirms their place in the world. However, there's a paradox here. The more we invest our identity in external things, the more vulnerable we become. Losing a valuable object can feel like losing a part of oneself, something that hurts far more than it should. Culture and societal expectations strongly fuel this dynamic. We're surrounded by messages urging us to consume and accumulate as if every new product promises happiness. But is that true? Or are we just trying to fill emotional gaps with things? As we dig deeper, it becomes clear that the relationship between what we own and who we are is, at best, complex. And when we look around, we see that these cultural influences have a direct connection to how we experience attachment in different contexts. The culture we grow up in profoundly shapes the value we place on things. In some societies, owning expensive items and symbols of status is almost a prerequisite for respect. For example, in highly capitalist countries like the United States, having the latest car or an impressive house is seen as synonymous with success. In contrast, in more communal cultures, such as certain African villages, value lies in items that benefit the collective, like farming tools or land. These contrasts show that material attachment isn't just personal. It's a response to the social norms surrounding us. Social pressure also plays a significant role in how we relate to material possessions. From a young age, we're bombarded with messages equating happiness with consumption. TV commercials, digital influencers, and even casual conversations encourage us to believe that more is better. Have you noticed how there's always a race to own the latest smartphone or the trendiest outfit? This silent competition often drives us to accumulate more than we need, creating an emotional connection to things that, deep down, don't hold much value. And yet, movements questioning this logic show us that less can be more. Minimalism, for example, challenges these cultural norms by suggesting that true freedom comes from owning less. But is this easy in a world constantly pushing us in the opposite direction? As we move forward, we begin to see that even our brains play a role in attachment, and understanding what happens in the mind can completely shift our view on why we hold on to certain things. Attachment isn't just an emotional matter, it's also a neurological one. Neuroscience studies show that when we connect with someone or something, neurotransmitters like dopamine and oxytocin come into play. Dopamine, often called the pleasure hormone, rewards us with feelings of well-being when we form bonds. Oxytocin, known as the love hormone, is crucial for building trust and affection. Imagine holding an object that belonged to a loved one. That feeling of comfort and nostalgia is literally chemistry happening in your brain. However, the same mechanism that connects us can also trap us. When we lose something or someone important, areas of the brain associated with physical pain, such as the anterior cingulate cortex, are activated. That's why grief, or even the loss of a cherished object, can feel like such a blow. It's not just the absence of what's lost, but the disruption of a reward circuit that once made us feel good. Have you ever noticed how a specific song or scent can instantly bring memories flooding back? That's because these emotional connections are deeply embedded in our neural pathways. Understanding the brain's role in attachment helps us see that while these bonds are natural, they don't have to be permanent. Techniques like mindfulness and therapy can help rewire these associations. For example, meditation practices teach the brain to find joy in the present without relying so heavily on external stimuli. And by exploring traditions like Buddhism, we discover ways to train the mind to find freedom within attachment. After all, what is detachment if not a skill we can learn? At the heart of Buddhist teachings lies the idea that attachment is one of the main sources of human suffering. Buddha taught that by clinging to things, people, or even ideas, we create expectations that often go unmet. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. This metaphor illustrates how attachment often leads to frustration and pain. Yet, detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means the freedom to appreciate without possessing, to love without clinging. Buddhist practices like Vipassana meditation cultivate this mindset. This form of meditation encourages impartial observation of thoughts and emotions, allowing us to let them pass without attachment. A simple practice anyone can try is to sit quietly for 10 minutes a day, focusing solely on the breath. When intrusive thoughts arise, instead of fighting them, observe them as clouds passing in the sky. Over time, this helps the mind find peace and realize that many of our desires and worries are fleeting. Detachment isn't just a spiritual practice. It's a path to a lighter, more meaningful life. In a world where we're constantly encouraged to accumulate and compete, choosing the path of detachment is almost an act of rebellion. But how does this connect to our daily lives? Movements like minimalism are rooted in this concept, showing that by letting go of excess, we create space for what truly matters. And this leads us to realize that less can surprisingly be more. Minimalism is more than an aesthetic. It's a lifestyle that challenges the logic of mindless consumption. At its core, the movement suggests that by eliminating excess, we make room for what truly matters. Think of a drawer full of clothes you never wear. Now imagine opening it and seeing only pieces you love and wear often. That clarity, both physical and mental, is what minimalism aims to bring. It's as if the weight of the unnecessary is lifted from your shoulders and your mind. The benefits of living with less go far beyond organization. Studies show that cluttered environments can increase stress levels and make it harder to focus. A practical example is applying the concept of decluttering to your space. Take a weekend to sort through items you no longer use and donate or sell what's just taking up space. Additionally, adopting minimalist habits, like thinking twice before every purchase, can positively impact both your wallet and your peace of mind. But minimalism isn't limited to material possessions. It can also be applied to our routines and even relationships. What if you focused only on the connections that truly enrich your life? Interestingly, minimalism teaches us that simplicity can be revolutionary, especially in a world that values accumulation. And when we think about the emotional impact of attachment, this brings us to reflect on how we handle the people in our closest circles. Emotional attachment is a double-edged sword in relationships. On one hand, it can strengthen bonds, bringing comfort and security. On the other, it can transform into dependence, creating suffocating ties. Have you noticed how some people struggle to be alone, feeling incomplete without someone else? This often reflects unhealthy attachment, where happiness depends solely on another's presence. However, there's a crucial difference between healthy attachment, which unites, and emotional dependence, which traps. Developing more balanced relationships requires self-awareness and practice. A useful exercise is to reflect on what you expect from your connections. Are you seeking support or validation? One way to balance this is by cultivating personal interests, like hobbies or projects, that don't rely on anyone but yourself. A simple example: if you enjoy reading, explore books like The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, which discusses the importance of authenticity. When we feel whole on our own, we can love without losing ourselves. The challenge lies in building bonds that respect individuality. This doesn't mean creating distance, but providing space for each person to grow autonomously. Honest conversations, setting boundaries, and practicing empathy are essential steps. At the same time, it's important to understand that no relationship will be perfect. After all, the ties we form reflect how we've learned to connect in life, but the good news is that we can adjust these connections. And if attachment can be transformed, can we also learn to overcome it? Overcoming attachment may seem like a daunting challenge, but it begins with small steps. The first is identifying what truly holds you back, whether it's an object, a person, or even an idea. Make a simple list. Write down what you can't imagine living without, and ask yourself why. For instance, that jacket you've kept for years, but never wear might reflect something deeper, like memories or fears. Recognizing this is already halfway to letting go. Gratitude is another powerful tool on this journey. Instead of focusing on what you feel you need, try appreciating what you already have. A practical exercise is listing 3 things you're grateful for each day before going to bed. This practice not only shifts your perspective but also reduces the urge to seek happiness in external things. If your attachment is emotional, replace thoughts like, "I need this," "I appreciate this, but I can live without it." Living in the present is essential to reducing harmful attachments. Mindfulness techniques, such as focusing on your breath for a few minutes daily, help keep you grounded in the now instead of being tied to the past or future. If an insistent thought arises, observe it without judgment and let it pass. Remember, letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means freeing yourself from the weight of what no longer makes sense to carry. Now that you understand how attachment influences your life, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue letting objects, people, or ideas dictate your choices? Or will you take the first step toward freeing yourself from this invisible weight? Remember, letting go doesn't mean losing. It means gaining space for what truly matters. Why not start today? Choose one thing you can let go of, a habit, a possession, or even a limiting belief, and see how it shifts your perspective. Life is too short to be lived in the service of what we don't truly need. Take a moment to reflect. What's holding you back? How would your life look without these chains? Detachment is a journey, but every step is worth it. If you want to keep learning how to transform your life and create a new relationship with what truly matters, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Let's embark on this journey of self-discovery and freedom together.